Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast presented by the Chargers Podcast Network. My name is Steven, and I am the host as always, and joining me is my guy, Tyler. Tyler, what's up, man? How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, man. You know what's better than losing? Winning. Winning is great, and winning 2 in a row is awesome. So nice to just be here after 2 wins. I could get used to this. And hey, guess what? You can't lose on a bye week, so we're doing great.
No, can't lose on a bye week. Can get healthy on a bye week. Hopefully that's what's happening this week. So definitely got some injury stuff that we can potentially dive into today. We're going to kind of jump back a little bit towards the Chargers and Raiders game, have some kind of final wrap-up coverage from that. And then we're going to kind of zoom out and kind of evaluate the Chargers, where they're at after 4 games. This is when the Chargers are going to self-scout a little bit. Like I mentioned, of course, they'll try and get healthy, but dive into some tendencies, dive into who has stood out, dive into who, what kind of needs to go right for this team going forward. And should be a lot of fun, should be a good conversation. Before we get started, Tyler and I are fans of the team, just like you guys are. We've been given this platform by the team and are very grateful to have this platform and share our opinions. At the end of the day, what we share on the show is that it is our opinions first and foremost. And what we share on the show is not always reflective of the opinions of the Chargers organization themselves. It's just me and Tyler here. We have this platform, and we're very grateful to be on it. And, we're going to dive into this game first and foremost, and then, like I said, zoom out a little bit here. All right, Tyler, so we're recording this on Tuesday night. We've had some time to kind of simmer and reflect on the Chargers win over the Raiders. You mentioned 2 wins in a row for this team. They're 2-2 heading into the bye week. What's kind of your big general takeaway from the Chargers win over the Raiders on Sunday afternoon, now that we have had that time to sit back and reflect on it?
That it was a much-needed figure-it-out game for a lot of players, or maybe just even parts of the team that they really needed heading into the bye week. I'm sort of, in a way, glad they had this game in between, the game against the Vikings where they lost Mike Williams, and then the bye week. But then, of course, they have the Chiefs and the Cowboys coming up. I'm glad that they had this game to try to sort through maybe a bit of what they wanted to work on with him out, who could stand out, who would work in this capacity, etc. But more than anything, I'm really glad this defense got this game. Of course, shout out Khalil Mack for having 6 sacks. That was a ton of fun to watch in the stands, especially when the Raiders fans are the ones next to you watching it, and they're going, maybe we could have kept that guy. I don't know. But we're happy to have Khalil Mack, of course. It was a solid to great day for the defense overall. Sure, there are some asterisks. Devontae Adams wasn't in there the whole game. Aiden O'Connell was starting. I get that. But still, you can only play who is across from you, right? And we've seen the defense occasionally against rookie quarterbacks like Davis Mills against the Texans a few years ago not quite have the performance that we were hoping for, especially when they're missing a couple of guys. But they perform very well. This defense is trending in the right direction. They, after that particular game, I think are 26th in defensive EPA per play, which doesn't sound great, but they were 32nd. And in this particular week, they were 10th in EPA per play as a defense. And again, missing Derwin James, missing 3 of their safeties, Joey Bosa, you name it. So I'm glad this offense got a bit of run to start to figure out who they are post Mike Williams. And I'm really glad to see that this defense starting to build momentum. They finished the game against the Vikings, and then I think this was easily their best defensive performance overall. Is this momentum moving forward? I hope so.
Yeah, I'm confident that it could be for this team. This unit has closed the games out, like you mentioned, 2 weeks in a row. And I think the plan specifically from Brandon Staley this week was a really effective game plan. And I think first and foremost, you have to kind of zoom in and talk about what the Chargers were able to do against Josh Jacobs in the run game. You and I talked on our own channel just about like the potential for a Josh Jacobs breakout game. You and I had both watched some Raiders film and felt like the Raiders were kind of close to figuring that part of their offense out. We know that Josh Jacobs led the league in rushing last year. And, you look at 3.8 yards per carry, and that's pretty decent, the overall production. But for me, I think you look at the yards after contact per attempt from Josh Jacobs, which is only 1.4. He didn't have a single explosive run that went over 10 yards. He did have some explosive receptions for sure. But, this run defense has been very much maligned over the last 2 years under Brandon Staley. But if you really take out the Vikings game, which I don't know how much they prepared for Alexander Mattison to be kind of the featured approach there as opposed to the passing game. But you look at the Titans game, you look at the Dolphins game, and you look at this Raiders game, and the run defense has performed very, very well, overall, and just when looking at kind of limiting the production there. And to me, that really starts with these edge rushers. We've talked a lot about Tuli on our show on this channel, Khalil Mack, the 6 sacks, but the way that these two edge rushers in particular, and Joey Bosa is certainly part of it, but we haven't really seen him healthy. The way that Tuli and Khalil Mack are defending the run is such a treat to see because, there are so many star pass rushers out in the league where they're pass rushers first and run defenders second. And the way that these two are playing against the run is really setting the tone for them. The second play of the game, the Raiders ran a GT counter, which is, they pulled the fullback who they had motioned over to kind of a tight end formation, and then their left guard, and Khalil kind of washes down and essentially erases both of the pulling players and gave Josh Jacobs zero space. Khalil was able to finish off the play, but if he hadn't, Eric Hendricks was right there. Tuli was chasing down from the backside. And it's just like all the dirty work that these two edge rushers are doing that really stands out to me when I watch the tape. You look at the numbers. Tuli Tuipulotu is tied for second in the league in run stops among edge rushers. He has the third highest run stop percentage. Khalil Mack is not very far behind. So that, to me, it was the kind of the point of emphasis from Khalil, from Joey, from Tuli in training camp. And so far, they have really put that out on tape. They have put that out on the stat sheet. And it's setting the tone for the way the defense is kind of rebounding after that Miami game, starting up front, starting up against the run from those two.
Yeah, compared to last year where Josh Jacobs had 26 carries for 144 yards, I'll certainly take 17 carries for 58 yards. And like you said, not a single run over 10 yards. His longest run of the day was 9 yards. We were very concerned. I think all Chargers fans were concerned. When you're missing your 3 safeties and you have a running back who's looked like he's going to break out at any moment, just breaks that one run, that 60-yard run. Oh, goodness, here we go again. I mean, the Chargers last year, we saw, 4 or 5 runs in a row of 40 yards, 50 yards. Those backbreakers didn't have that, and Josh Jacobs never came close to that. As a receiver, maybe fine, but certainly not as a runner, so fantastic there. I'm going to flip it back to you now because you did watch the film, and I noticed today that you pointed this out on social media as well. What did you make of the Raiders deciding to send more help towards Tuli's side than Khalil Mack's side, which clearly did not work? So I appreciate them for that. But what did you make of that?
I was shocked to see that approach. And listen, Tuli's played great. I understand sending help there, but this is a revenge game. The Raiders should know more than anybody else what Khalil Mack can do. So for them to come out in this game and actively not send help to Khalil Mack was shocking. One of the most puzzling game plan decisions I've seen in a very long time studying tape. And, you look at Tuli's box score, right? He has 1 pressure, right? But he has the 3 run stops. And, it speaks a lot about where he's at. But also, I can't wrap my head around, the Chargers prepared for Max Crosby, right? They chipped, they double teamed, they slid protection. That's what you have to do against these guys. So the fact that Khalil Mack has the 6 sacks, he has the 9 pressures or 10 pressures, depending on what kind of source you're coming from, against the Raiders, and they were not sending help his way was shocking. I couldn't believe my eyes when I was watching how much help they were sending towards Tuli and nothing towards Khalil. It was very, very surprising.
Well, just let me know where I have to send the fruit basket, the flowers, wherever. I appreciate that. You keep game planning. We'll see you in a few weeks. Steven, after rewatching the tape, what is your big takeaway from this game?
Yeah, my big takeaway is the way that Kellen Moore kind of came out and established a rhythm was really fun to watch in the first half. The second half, I think rightfully so, you can criticize a little bit. Some of that is the Justin Herbert injury, the Justin Herbert interception, which I did not love that decision that he made to throw that football. But the way that Kellen Moore came out in the first half, you get the creative touches towards Darius Davis, you get some screens, you get some deep passes. I just really loved the balance that Kellen Moore came out with in this first half. And like you mentioned, kind of to start the show, trying to figure out what works and what doesn't with without Mike Williams, without Corey Linsley. One of the little changes that I really liked is that they have been so downhill heavy, and I think they were really intentional about attacking the second levels and third levels of the Raiders defense in the run game. They were actively trying to get the linebackers and the safeties and the corners to be the ones who had to come up and tackle Joshua Kelly, Isaiah Spiller, and it was very intentional in that way. They did some quick option passes, but in the first game against Miami, they would motion the tight end to kind of an H-back setting, and they would run Y insert zone. And it was a downhill approach. It was a great way to get these tight ends moving. They've really started to branch off of that look, and you could tell that the Raiders were prepared for them to motion the tight end and run downhill. Well, this game they did some counter concepts. They did the toss concepts. So I just love the overall approach to the game plan, and it shows that Kellen Moore is adapting the offense. He's coming out with plans to catch other defenses off guard. And there are certainly some things that you can criticize of the Kellen Moore offense so far. But I just have really enjoyed watching his game plans and the way that he approaches the first half every single week, because you can tell that there's always a plan of attack. There's always a way for him to catch opposing defenses off guard. And that was a real treat to watch on tape against the Raiders on Sunday.
Yeah, we've been begging for creativity from this offense for the longest time, not being so predictable, whether that's motion or whether that's using 4 tight ends on fourth down. And I mean, you're taking Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Josh Palmer, Darius Davis, Quentin Johnson off the field to run 4 tight ends on fourth down against the Vikings. You get a touchdown out of it. You've got a pitch play to Darius Davis. You've got another handoff to Darius Davis. Everything that they're doing, whether it works or doesn't work, I'm so glad to see this offense and Kellen Moore just trying out different things. And look, they're still 4th in EPA per play. Like, this is still a good offense, which is crazy because they're still trying to figure things out. They're still working out through things. But I love that they're doing that because that just continues to allow me to say, okay, this offense is pretty good, but it can reach another tier. It can reach another tier, whether it's just execution or just finding a good set of plays that really work for them. I love that you mentioned they did something against Miami, and hey, that worked. It worked really darn well.
Yeah.
But what you can't do is the exact same thing over and over and over again, usually, because teams will prepare for that. Even the Raiders, who are kind of shorthanded and not the strongest defense, they can prepare for that. So like you said, what they do, they change it up. I love that we're seeing that from the Chargers, and they're only going to get better after the bye.
Yeah, they set up a few other things that I really loved. Justin wasn't able to get there, but the first time that they were out there in kind of that bunch formation where against the Vikings they ran a ton of wide receiver screens, and that was the way that they mitigated pressure. They did it. They did it again, and the first time they ran it, they were able to get Keenan free vertically. Justin didn't have time to get there. I forget if it was John Jenkins, the Raiders defensive tackle, or which one. Beat Zion unfortunately like right away and got pressure. But it's just like the concept that Kellen Moore is coming into these plans and saying, hey, like, we've shown this previously. We know you're going to be prepared for it, but let's have this counter approach to it. The Darius Davis toss play, the vertical catch to Keenan that they did come down with was another kind of variation of the screens that they have been kind of workshopping every single game. So it's just a really sound approach to start these games and catch these defenses off guard. Like you mentioned, they're performing at a top 5 clip in most metrics. And we just need to get some of this translated towards the second half of that Raiders game, and I think they could have put them away. But there was a couple decisions I didn't love from Kellen and from Justin in the second half. Like there was that the Chargers' second drive, they got pinned deep on the 2-yard line, and they threw 3 vertical routes. And I'm like, you need some space to either punt this ball or get a drive going. And I didn't love that particularly. But overall, like you zoom out and you look at this Kellen Moore offense, and there's like a very clear identity. There's plans every single week. He's adapting every single week. They're playing to their players' strengths for the most part. And Justin Herbert has the most attempts of 20 air yards or more in the league right now. He's 7th highest in ADOT. Like, they're doing everything that we wanted them to do. There's just some things to tweak and clean up for sure. But so far, so good for the Kellen Moore offense.
Yeah, even Justin Herbert's turnover-worthy play rate, it is, I think, double than – no, that's still very small. double for Justin Herbert is still one of the best in the league in terms of turnover-worthy play rate. But he's throwing it down there. And look, I didn't like the decision either. Of course, that interception in the stands, even just from where I was standing, it's like, well, I don't quite understand that decision. But again, like they are trying different things. And what do you get out of that? You get, an ADOT that is beyond anything that he's ever had in his career. I don't think it's ever been over 8, and it's currently over 9 for him there. The big time throw rate is higher as well. The big time play rate is higher. So these things, like, I don't think Justin Herbert's going to throw interceptions like that every game. It's not like him. But I love that he's just testing the possibilities of what this offense can do.
Yeah, like sheer probability numbers would indicate that some of these deep balls are going to be connecting at a higher level. Even when Mike Williams was out there, you just felt like they were due for like a really like big, productive, explosive, vertical game. And they've been explosive without, connecting on a ton of these, bomb throws from Justin Herbert. So I think they're third in explosive passes. I think they're fourth overall in explosive plays this year. So the Kellen Moore offense has been a treat to watch on film. There's clear plans. There's, like I said, there's adjustments. It's just been like very sound, and I think that's what the Chargers needed on offense. And then, oh, by the way, they're letting Justin Herbert just throw bombs down the field, and I'm excited to see him start connecting with those more often.
Mm-hmm. Was his 51-yarder to Palmer the longest throw of the year so far?
Ooh, good question. I want to say yes, because I think the deep throw to Keenan in week 1, I think, was the longest pass of the season up until that Joshua Palmer pass.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool.
So, well, we'll check on that for sure. All right, Tyler, let's get to our game ball segment, and then we'll kind of, like I said, zoom out a little bit and see where the Chargers are at. Who's getting your game ball of the week this week?
Yeah, I'm going in a different direction with this one. It's nearly impossible, right, to play in the NFL and start in the NFL. It's infinitely more difficult to play and to be out there when dealing with loss, and in particular, the loss of your father. And I don't care if Eric Kendricks had 2 run stops or he had 20 run stops. I don't care. He went out there and went to work with a burden that I couldn't possibly imagine, and showed more poise than any of us could ever hope to in an impossible situation. So performance, whatever, 1,000,000 tackles or 0, doesn't matter. Like, Eric Kendricks gets my game ball and my respect and my admiration.
Yeah, we talked about that on Saturday when the news came out, and just, the human element of football is right here with Eric Kendricks. On the field, like, the stat sheet isn't like amazing. He had a good amount of tackles, but the game plan here was really, really sound, and Eric Kendricks was kind of the key piece there. They had him do the deep Tampa 2 drop on several occasions, and he really confused Aiden O'Connell. I think that was kind of the focus point there. There were a couple instances where, he's just dropping in basic kind of cover 2 and was able to match with Hunter Renfrow, Jacoby Myers, Michael Mayer. So Eric Kendricks was all the way locked in coverage, and I think the Chargers really were able to take advantage of Eric Kendricks being out there. Like, I think this was I don't want to say vintage Eric Kendricks game, because I still think he's a really good player, but what he did against coverage, I think, was really a key in allowing the pass rush to get home. Aiden O'Connell's average time to throw was 2.75 seconds on Sunday, which is a really high number. Generally speaking, you want your quarterback around 2.5. So to have that extra quarter of a second is huge for your pass rush if they can get home. And obviously, Khalil Mack was able to do that all day long. So I'm glad you shouted out Eric Kendricks, because I thought, even if the stat sheet didn't show it necessarily, I thought he played a phenomenal game on Sunday.
Yeah, I think so. I can only imagine and wonder and guess who your game ball might go to then.
I think it does have to be Khalil. 6 sacks is a historic day. You rightfully shouted out Eric Kendricks, but one of 7 players, one of 5 players to get 6 sacks in one game. Derek Thomas did did it twice, which is crazy to me.
Wow.
So Khalil's it was just in rare air, and we felt, like I said on our show, I felt like he was due for a big game. I didn't think 6 sacks was going to be the big game, but I just thought that he impacted the game outside of the sacks, like the run defense. He got a batted pass in the fourth quarter. I just thought this was like truly an all-around elite performance from Khalil Mack, and one that I think was great to see. I will say, like, on a lower level, the Chargers are dealing with some injuries, obviously, and I thought Dean Marlowe looked really good on tape. I thought he did some fantastic things back there. He had a couple chances on the football. I'm sure he wishes that he would have been able to come down with those, but he got his hands on the football twice. He had a couple run stops. He played the run well. I think they really trusted him in the deep part of the field too, and he was really able to read and react at a high level. So, on a smaller level, it's hard to beat out some all-time performances, but Dean Marlowe stepped up in a big way for this team without Derwin James, Alohi Gilman, JT Woods, and they're gonna need him for the next few weeks as well after the bye, because JT Woods is on the non-football illness list. Alohi's banged up, Derwin's banged up, so they're gonna need Dean Marlowe, and I think that he definitely showed some good things on tape.
Yeah, what a pleasant surprise. I mean, you never knew, and this really felt like the here comes Devontae Adams sort of game, here comes Jacoby Myers breaks out or whatever. And I think the longest pass completed was 25 yards, which is sure technically still an explosive pass. But you know what it's not? It's not 40. It's not 50. It's not one of those game-breaker big passes they've allowed. And Dean Marlowe was a huge part of that. I know the PFF has him, I think it had 0 passes broken up. I could have sworn there was more than that. I could have sworn he was in on more than that. So him protecting the post was phenomenal. And I was honestly pleasantly surprised to see him out there and playing so well, because again, you have a lot on your plate after the bye, and if he can play like that and just protect the post, kind of in a way you haven't really seen since, like, it felt very Trey Boston-y, to me, the way he was protecting the post.
Love that.
Not that that's very long ago, but that's kind of how it felt. Like he's always the security guy back there. So it had to have that from a guy who was just brought to the practice squad a month ago or whatever is really impressive.
Yeah, I thought he played well. I thought Will Clapp played pretty well, too. I know people were worried about that. I thought Will Clapp deserved a shout-out, too. So good depth players. I think, the team obviously needs these guys to play well without some of their star players, and I thought some of them had some really good moments on Sunday. All right, so we're going to zoom out here a little bit. Like we mentioned, the Chargers were able to get to 2-2 here and really right the ship, and I think most of their goals are still right there in front of them. You look at this AFC as a whole, and there's no undefeated team right now. The Chiefs and the Bills, the Ravens and the Dolphins are each 3-1, and then like half the conference is 2-2 right now. So Tyler, where do you kind of envision the Chargers in the AFC right now? Both of us kind of had some really strong expectations for this team heading into the season. 2-2 with this schedule that they have coming up. Where do you kind of see the Chargers fitting in from an AFC perspective?
So before the season, I predicted they would not win the division, but they would be one of the 5th or 6th seed in the AFC. And I definitely think that is still in play. Unfortunately, right now, the Chiefs are still one of the class teams in the AFC. And again, until they collapse for whatever reason, I'm going to continue to assume that they're going to win the West. And they are 3-1, and they are leading the West right now. Again, no surprise. I think the Chargers, in terms of the games that they won and the games versus the games that they played, I would have loved to see them be 3-1 at this point. Lose to one of the Dolphins or the Titans, but handle business against the Vikings and the Raiders. 2-2 isn't terrible. What I think really benefits them the most isn't necessarily where they're at as much as other teams. I think that, for example, the Jets losing Aaron Rodgers 5 minutes into a game helps them tremendously when it comes to that game. If you had asked me right now, looking at the Chargers as they were, as we've watched them, if they had Aaron Rodgers, and we're going to assume that he played well, would they beat the Jets? I'd say no. But with Zach Wilson out there, you feel a lot better. Now, that team's still going to fight, don't get me wrong, but it just helps that much. The Bengals are definitely not the team that they were hoping to be this season at all. And they are potentially just out of the postseason picture as is. So I think the Chargers are in a really good spot. One, because I think they're building some momentum, even with some injuries, although they will get some guys back after the bye. But also the AFC is just not quite been exactly as strong as we would have thought. But we'll see. It is very early, of course. So many things can change. But I like where the Chargers are at right now. And teams like the Steelers and the Jaguars this week that are ahead of them in the 6th and the 8th seed, they are playing some difficult teams this week. This week. So the Jaguars are playing the Bills this week. The Ravens are playing the Steelers this week. And I think those two teams in front of the Chargers will both lose. And again, I think that'll benefit the team. Although, again, the Chargers don't win, so they don't get a win here, but they might get some help in the long run.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that's benefited the Chargers that's outside of their control is how the AFC North has looked so far. I think I was bullish on the Steelers as a casual fan. I loved what they did in the draft, and Mike Tomlin is just such a great coach, but they have been one of the worst offenses in the league through 4 weeks. So have the Bengals, and some of that is health related to Joe Burrow, right? But these are two teams who had like legitimate division title hopes, who had, the Bengals were considered a clear Super Bowl threat heading into the season. And now they're kind of scraping and clawing to try and get back and relevant. We'll see where kind of the health goes of both of those two quarterbacks. But you look at the Bengals right now, and they kind of got like their butts kicked against the Titans. And we saw the Chargers against the Titans a few weeks ago. And to lose that game as a Bengals fan, 27-3, like that's got to be pretty disheartening for the way that went down. Vintage Derrick Henry performance, which against the Bengals defense you didn't really see coming. So those two teams being kind of stuck in the mud as they are is very beneficial for the Chargers. You mentioned the Jets. Aaron Rodgers reportedly says he's going to play again. I don't know if I don't know where that's going to end up, but weirdly enough, like the AFC South is kind of good right now. I mean, the Colts are 2-2, the Texans are 2-2, the Jags are 2-2. So I think the AFC is still pretty muddy as we thought it would be. It's just kind of like different teams you feel better about right now. But I think the Chargers have this opportunity ahead of them to really gain some separation. I'm worried about the Cowboys, right? I think the Cowboys defense is fantastic. But the Cowboys play the 49ers this week. It's a primetime game, and they're going to have a semi-short week, playing with the Chargers next Monday after that. That's kind of a schedule favor for the Chargers after a bye week. So you have this opportunity against the Cowboys and then against the Chiefs to really start creating some separation from those other teams that we're talking about that are kind of struggling right now. So if you can get to 3-3, if you can get to 4-2, then I think the Chargers can really like create some true momentum and still reach their potential this year.
I mean, if they can even get one of the wins against the Cowboys or Chiefs, like that is incredibly impressive. I know no one's going to love 3-3, but you go 1-1 in those games and you're feeling pretty good. Against the Cowboys, who are an excellent team, they're much better when they're healthy, believe it or not. I know the Cardinals beat them, but they looked significantly better. Then, of course, the Chiefs are the Chiefs. Another team that I think helps a lot too. What is one of the teams that we've picked every single year, basically, for the Chargers to lose in this particular place against this particular team? That's
Yes.
Denver. And I think that, look, I get it. No matter what with this Broncos team, there's always an issue when the Chargers go to Denver. But this Denver team is really bad. Like this Denver team almost actively looks like it's tanking, except for occasionally on the offense when they look all right. But this defense is not nearly what I thought it was going to be. And so I think things like that help. I think the Patriots being 1-3, we'll see where they are at the end of things, of course. Again, another team, and it's at Foxborough, that gives the Chargers fits. But games like that, are those potential swing games, I think starting to lean more in the Chargers' favor as long as the Chargers can stay healthy and those teams are kind of still not finding their footing just yet.
Yeah, and I think playing those teams late in the season is going to be helping. I mean, they play the Broncos in Week 14 and then again in Week 17. The Broncos could be active shoppers at the deadline here coming up in the next few weeks. Their season could essentially be over. The Patriots, same kind of thing there in Week 13. They play the Raiders again in Week 15. It's in Vegas on a Thursday night, but that's another team that could be sellers at the deadline. So the back half of the schedule for the Chargers, I think a lot of people were worried about, but I think after 4 weeks, you probably feel really good about it. You just have to get past this 2-game window. I think is the toughest 2-game window on the schedule remaining coming out of the bye week. But that's where the Chargers are at. Like I said, if you can get to 3-3, you're in a great spot because this schedule eases up pretty nicely for the Chargers after that Week 8 game against the Chiefs.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the game next week, of course, but Kellen Moore's got now 2 weeks and an extra Sunday to prepare for his former team, so it should be a good one.
Yeah, it should be a good one. All right, we're going to dish out some awards here for the Chargers. We do this every single year on our channel, and hopefully you guys enjoy the segments here. Quarterly awards, mid-season awards. It's always fun to kind of revisit things and see where they're at for this respective team. Tyler, let's start with your favorite storyline of the season so far.
Ooh, favorite storyline of the season. I think it's going to be how Keenan Allen has found the fountain of youth. I think this was a player that was potentially a trade candidate or a cut candidate, certainly this offseason and potentially even next offseason. And he's gone, no, thank you. I'm just going to have the best start to my career, and I'm going to throw for a touchdown. I'm going to have 424 receiving yards, 35 catches, the highest yards per route run of my entire career. And I'm going to show you that I plan on being here for a very long time. Keenan Allen is my favorite player on the team. I got my season tickets the same year that he was drafted. And, a lot has changed for this team. They've changed cities. They've changed stadiums a couple of times. Keenan Allen has been a constant, and I've been dying for him to get his deep playoff run, Super Bowl, if he can, obviously, and him turning back the clock and being one of the best receivers in the league, both in terms of raw stats, efficiency, and no drops, by the way. It's been an awesome storyline. I've loved watching him play so far, and he's only going to continue to rack up numbers and really inch towards that Larry Fitzgerald kind of career where he just continues to be productive. And I think Keenan Allen is en route to, if he can continue to play this well for much longer with Justin Herbert, and I don't see why I should doubt him, trending towards getting to those Hall of Fame kind of stats.
Yeah, and you add in some potential postseason successes and potentially a Super Bowl, that would definitely cement him there. Some people were asking me this week about what did the Raiders do to see if Keenan was being limited. I think the Chargers were not able to get to him on a couple of things because of pressure. They didn't run a ton of plays in the second half, so I don't think the Raiders necessarily did anything to limit Keenan Allen this week. Since you brought him up, I did want to mention that out, but I think that's a good one. Storyline for me has to be Tuli, man. Tuli and the way that he has played has just been a true treat to watch. And we felt good about his run defense. We felt good about his ability to, just create some hustle snaps. But he's actively in the Defensive Rookie of the Year conversation through 4 games, and I think rightfully so. I mean, he's taking double teams away from Khalil Mack, which is so funny to see on tape still. But it's just elevating the floor of this defense, and I think things are really starting to round into form for that specific unit as a defensive line, as an edge rusher group. So what Tuli is doing right now for me has to be my favorite storyline.
You and I have been discussing different awards we could hand out today. Best play on defense, maybe. Best player at their position, and what we've been the most wrong about. Best storyline, best play, best player, defensive player. I feel like Tuli could win all of them. He's been awesome, and that's why he is one of the best storylines. If you went first and said Keenan, I would have said Tuli. What he's done is phenomenal. Again, I disagree with the game plan from the Raiders, but have at it. Taking pressure off of Khalil Mack and freeing up Khalil Mack. That's wonderful. And obviously we've seen him free up Joey Bosa as a rusher as well. What he's done through the first 4 games as a two-way player against the run and as a pass rusher has been outstanding. The Chargers got themselves a steal, and you rarely hear about draft steals, but that tends to be more where we think they're going to be drafted versus where they're actually drafted. In this case, I think second round is kind of where Tuli was supposed to go, and the Chargers just found themselves one of the best edge rushers in the draft in the second round, and this was a pretty good edge group overall. Some guys at the top were very good, a lot of depth of this group as well. The Chargers needed to find, and they really could have found any one of 15 different edge rushers on day 1 or day 2. And they found the one that might be the Defensive Rookie of the Year frontrunner. That's pretty darn good. Heck of a pick.
Yeah, I think it was Chris Rim for ESPN did a feature on Khalil Mack's day, and he asked Khalil like what his favorite sack of the 6 was, and he said the first one because it also involved Tuli, because it was like something that they've been workshopping, something that's been like a work in progress for them. It just kind of clicked, and Tuli was able to take both of the Raiders blockers with him, and then freed up Khalil for a really nasty loop and finish. And this trio, and really Chris Rumph in here as well, you can really tell that they all just feed off of each other. Joey Bosa gets that sack against the Vikings and gives a huge running hug to Tuli, right? This week, Tuli gets a run stop, and he does his T, right? And you see Khalil Mack right behind him doing the T also. I loved that. Seeing the camaraderie of this group has really stood out to me. They love playing with each other. That the energy that they all bring just feeds off of each other, and Tuli's taking attention away from them. They're taking away attention from Tuli, and it just works. Like the three of them, it just works so well. And once Joey gets healthy, like I think really this edge rusher group is going to be pretty scary once we get to that point.
Yeah, that's disgusting. So we've now had the Khalil Mack 6-sack game. We've had Tuli be excellent throughout the year. Joey Bosa has had some great moments, but limited. And they're all going to be back. After the bye, it seems like they're all going to be back and as healthy as they could be after the bye. That's going to be nasty. We'll see if Kansas City enjoys or regrets maybe perhaps their decisions at tackle, and we'll see what they got. I could see them having a huge game, that one.
For sure. All right, let's do best play on offense, Tyler. I think for me, my choice is pretty clear. I think that you have to go with the double pass. I think that's been something that we've been waiting for. Keenan has been talking about how much he wants to throw a touchdown pass for the last few years. It obviously coming in the game that Mike Williams becomes injured, I think just only adds to that. But kind of hearkening back here, it was something that the team was setting up, and then right as they did it, you knew that they were going to hit on it. Frankly, Keenan could have thrown a touchdown to Joshua Palmer in that instance. They were both wide open and a ton of grass to run. So super cool moment. I think, looking back on it, obviously means more because of Mike, getting that touchdown in that game that he gets injured. But it's just been something that has been building for years, and for this offense specifically, like they've been really kind of harping in on that specific look. So double pass for me, best play on offense so far.
I love that. Josh Palmer and Mike Williams are so wide open that Keenan Allen had to read the defense, or no defense, but he had to make a decision of which wide open person he was going to throw it to. Like you talked about, the offense set that up in the same way they set up the touchdown pass to Keenan in the Titans game, off of throwing it off to Mike usually on a screen. Oops, there goes Keenan Allen that way. Set up a screen this way. Oh, we're throwing to Mike Williams this way. Love that. That's a fantastic one. That was going to be one of my choices for sure. For me, it's a bit recency bias, I guess. But the fadeaway three-pointer, whatever you want to call it, not necessarily a game winner, but the game ender from Justin Herbert against the Las Vegas Raiders. I mean, and the story was perfect, right? Like, is he clutch? Is he not? I don't know. Oh, national media. It was the throw of the day with the game on the line, 3rd and 10, backed up at your own 11. Raiders fans are getting loud. There's no Mike Williams to help you. There's no Mike Williams to go catch that phenomenal pass, right? No Corey Linsley to protect you. No Austin Eckler as your security outlet. You've got a fractured finger or whatever it was. You're the AFC West rival across from you. You've got to get it done. There was pressure in his face. Moved up, flicked it, threw it like it was nothing. And watching that from the stands, from my side, we were in that end zone, and you're just going, no way. Did he just hit this? Boom. Throws it to Josh Palmer. Sideline goes wild. Crowd goes wild. And I really thought that the Raiders were gaining momentum to go win that game. And Herbert went, nah, don't worry about it. Throws it 51 yards, game over. And that was my favorite play on offense so far this season.
Yeah, cool as the other side of the pillow, man. That was so just much fun to watch on tape. It was great to watch on TV too. During the broadcast, Trent Green, who's been harping on the fact that Justin has this splint on his finger, he can't grip the football. They're not going to be able to throw it downfield. They're not going to be able to go under center. And then for Justin to just come out and Trent Green is active like, oh my gosh, they're going to throw the football. Like he was shocked that they were going to throw the football. Yeah. And Justin just dropped a dime, 50 yards in the air to Joshua Palmer. So just like casual pocket management. That was a great one. And I think very deserving of best play on offense.
Mm-hmm.
right, Tyler, let's do best play on defense. What's your choice here?
So I'm going to go recency bias again, and I'm going to go with Asante Samuel Jr.'s pick against the Raiders in the game that we just saw. I'm sure we said all the things, AFC West, rivals, all that sort of thing. But I've been talking about this defense, and in particular how we as fans in the stands need something to believe in. And we need to believe that this defense is going to get it done in the end. The more belief we have that they're going to come up with a big play, the more we're going to cheer, the more we're going to support the team as much as we can and show up to these games. And again, believe. There's a feeling in the stands, even if nobody says it, that, Justin Herbert will get it done, or, maybe the defense isn't going to hold in this particular spot. We've needed some positive momentum that this defense is going to hold. And again, I thought the Raiders were going to go and win that game. And Asante Samuel Jr. steps in front of the pass and gets an interception. And, maybe we won't talk about the run back or the lack of run back, I'll say that much. But in that moment, and it's very different when you're sitting in the stands, there's an exhale and a sort of a different kind of exclamation that you make when there's relief and you realize you were so nervous and so tense because you thought, oh my gosh, the Chargers might lose this game because here come the Raiders and they're moving. The exhale and the excitement following that interception and turning to my mom to my left and giving her a huge hug and jumping up and down. That was the play on defense for me of the year. One, because it did help the Chargers beat the Raiders, and two, because we believed. We started to believe, the defense can get it done because Asante Samuel Jr. picked it off. And so now just, again, the next time we see the Chargers live, it'll be the next game against the Cowboys. And maybe we'll cheer just that much harder, that much louder, because you know what? Even if the other team, the Cowboys, gets right to the 3-yard line, we still have a chance. And look, the previous week, the Vikings, they got to the 1-yard line, and the Chargers kept them out. And this time, the Raiders were almost there to tie this game up, and the Chargers got the interception. So to me, that belief, building that belief is so huge for this team and for fans.
Yeah, you want to talk about things you can believe in. The Chargers right now in the red zone are performing at a really high level on both sides of the football. In the last 3 games, the Chargers are only allowing a red zone touchdown on 46% of their respective drives. That's 8th best in the league right now. And, credit to Brandon Staley's unit, man. They've really stepped up and answered calls in the red zone and come up with crucial, plays to win these games. And you want to talk about Asante's play? I think Kenneth Murray's interception is right there with it too. Something that, Daniel Popper wrote about was that Nick Niemann had prepared. They saw this look on film and they were waiting for it all game long. And then the Vikings finally go to it, and Nick Niemann makes a play on the football, bats it back to JT Woods, who bats it back to Kenneth Murray. And, it just was building things, I think, is something that we've kind of talked about today on this show. Everything was building towards that specific moment because the Chargers were so prepared for that specific look that the Vikings ran so frequently. And they finally went to it in literally with the game on the line. And Nick Niemann read it out perfectly, made a great play on the football in place of Eric Kendricks, who is dealing with all this stuff with his dad and not able to play in Minnesota. So it's these role players got to step up in these key moments. Nick Niemann did that. JT Woods did that. Kenneth Murray did that. And they were able to win that game as well. So, again, the red zone defense has been really, really solid for this team. And these plays are specifically why they're doing what they're doing in the red zone right now.
Yeah, you and I are on the same page. That would have been my other pick if I didn't pick the other one that I just had because, that was really the start of the Chargers finally finishing on defense. And now they've done it 2 weeks in a row. Lo and behold, they are 2-0 during that 2-week span.
Yeah. All right, let's do best or biggest surprise thus far, Tyler. What's your answer there?
I think it has to go to Kenneth Murray, and in particular Week 2 and Week 3 when he was the green dot guy, and he was again in Week 4, but Eric Kendricks came back. I think that I, at least, and many fans were unsure of how things would go with Eric Kendricks out, with Kenneth Murray getting the green dot, and Derrick Henry and Tajay Spears next. And what did Kenneth Murray do? He had maybe the best game of his career. Brandon Staley said it's the best game he's seen from Kenneth Murray in the 2.5 years that he's been here. And yeah, I would certainly agree. I am pleasantly surprised by how he's played this season. Because look, there's a lot we can say about training camp and how good he looked, but that is training camp. Things can change. Not everything holds over into the regular season. But Kenneth Murray, in particular, in week 2 and week 3, when he had to be the guy, looked really, really strong, playing downhill. I think in particular, statistically more productive in week 2 against Derrick Henry, and then, solid in week 3 as well, but also came down with that week 3 interception and just set the tone for the Chargers defense. So the Chargers, it's not close against the Titans if he's not playing well. I know they lost. It's certainly, I don't think, a win against the Vikings when things are close. They really needed him, and so that has been a big surprise for me. He's currently on pace for the most tackles, run stops, and pressures of his career.
There we go. Love to see that one. Biggest surprise, I think Kenneth Murray's a good choice. There are some smaller ones that I think we could talk about, but I want to give a shout out here to Jamaree Salyer, not because I'm necessarily surprised that he is playing well, but the way that he has just transitioned to playing guard has been seamless. He is just really playing at a very, very high level. There's some kind of ID issues, especially against stunts that need to get corrected between him and Trey Pipkins. That was Max Crosby's last sack of the day. Was Jamaree just kind of held on for too long on that stunt, gave Max Crosby essentially a free runway. Happened in week 1 against the Dolphins, but if you just kind of isolate him in one-on-one situations, both as a run blocker and as a pass blocker, the dude is just stonewall out there. He is actively shutting down these other defensive tackles. Jeffrey Simmons obviously got him a couple times. He gets everyone. He's potentially defensive player of the year right now in the NFL. So the way that Jamaree has just come in and been such a calming presence for this team. Again, I knew that he was good, right? We all know that Jamaree Salyer handled his business at left tackle, but the way that he's playing at guard should give Chargers fans a ton of confidence, I think, in what this offensive line can do. Hopefully, when healthy, if Corey Lindsey is able to come back from his medical situation. But Jamaree, he's just been nails, man. He's just calm and collected out there. He has answers for what opposing defensive tackles are doing for him. And if you dare and try and bull rush him, you will lose. He is so strong up there at the point of attack. And it's just been so much fun to watch him just step in and right away just be nails for this team.
One of my favorite players. Jamaree is awesome. As he said himself, the only starter on the offensive line who can go to the bank and pull out his entire bank account. Poor guy. But hey, man, like he said, even in the interview when I interviewed him after he got drafted, he didn't care where he got drafted, where he went. He's here. He's a Charger now. He's going to give the team everything that he has. And I loved watching him on film in college. I loved talking to him. I've loved watching him in practice, even watching him at left tackle. And we thought he'd be good, right? He was projected to be a guard, and so we thought he'd be a good guard. But there's that big switch from you just played an entire season at left tackle. Now go figure out right guard. Go flip sides and go to the interior and figure it out. And to see and to hear that he has is awesome. And when they showed his face during the national anthem, I knew the Chargers were going to win. He just was Jamaree's the nicest guy in the world. He's got to be him, Joshua Kelly, some of the nicest guys on the team. I'm not kidding.
When he gets on the field, it's different, man.
It's very different. Sebastian Joseph Day as well. I would never cross that guy. Jamaree is awesome. Yeah, don't bull rush that guy. That is a former 5-star recruit who played at Georgia and shut down Aiden Hutchinson at tackle. He is not afraid of anybody, and he'll take care of business.
Yeah. All right, well, our last one here, I want to frame this as more of an outstanding player conversation. I think if you frame it as MVP, I think that's very clearly Justin Herbert, and this might still very well be Justin Herbert. But most outstanding player, I think, allows a more kind of wider scope. And, Justin has been awesome. We talked about him a ton on our last episode on this channel, being after the best game of his career. Most outstanding player to me, shocker, I'm going back to the offensive line. I'm going back to Rashawn Slater. I think he had his worst game of his career against the Raiders, and he was still outstanding. He was still playing at a really, really high level. The things that he's able to do physically are just insane to me every single week. There was a rep where Max Crosby is trying to turn the corner, and he spins on him, and Rashawn like loses a step. But then right as Max Crosby is about to hit Justin Herbert, Rashawn just steps right in front of him, anchors down. You're not touching my guy. Just the recovery skills on a week-to-week basis are really just insane for me to watch. The transition for the run scheme is an underrated storyline for him because, it was a lot of outside zone at Northwestern. The Chargers in the first 2 seasons of his career, a lot of outside zone. It's a lot of getting him on the movement, getting him on the edge, getting him up to the second level, and he was awesome at that. But this year they're doing a lot more gap scheme, they're doing a lot more counter, they're doing a lot more power concepts, and some draft analysts would have said, like, hey, like if you're going to get Rashawn in a power scheme, he's got to play guard. And right now he's just blocking the run at an incredible rate. ESPN has him in the top 10 in run block win rate right now. His run block grade on PFF is really high, and you see it on tape. You see him just moving folks in the game, setting the edge, sealing the backside edge. He's just doing everything that the Chargers could ask of him. And, oh, by the way, like he can just be left on an island against anyone. There were a couple times where the Chargers against the Raiders were max protecting, and you got a double team, and then Rashawn one-on-one because you know that guy is just nails and can shut down that side. So, again, I won't begrudge anybody for trusting Justin Herbert and mentioning him here, but Rashawn Slater to me is playing at a truly like all-pro level right now, and he absolutely should be recognized with that kind of honor at the end of the season. He's been lights out for this team so far.
I've never seen he rarely loses, but I've never seen a Chargers offensive lineman, at least not for some time, that could even lose 99% of his rep and then still finish with a win because of just that last second switch to power and anchor that he can flip. And it's every week. You see Brandon Thorne, Duke Manyweather, Jeff Schwartz, like anybody, all these breakdowns. It's always Rashawn Slater. Oh, maybe he might lose the first half of the rep, and then it's just he shuts it down the second half. You know more about offensive line play. You can appreciate it more. But just from my perspective and any general fan perspective, you have to admire what he can do. Anytime you can watch offensive line play and just see highlights that aren't even necessarily pancakes or knockdowns, just elite offensive line play, it's awesome to see. Like, I love watching him play, and that would have been the person that I had picked because we had talked about Tuli, we had talked about Keenan Allen. So in that case, I will go with Justin Herbert. We've talked about Keenan, we talked about Tuli, we talked about Rashawn Slater, but this team is not nearly anywhere close to 2-2. They're somehow like 0-5 if they don't have Justin Herbert. Like, they somehow lost an extra game if they don't have Justin Herbert. The guy has been nails. In every single game, he's put the team on his back and been everything that you wanted from him, and in some cases more. We said that the game against the Vikings, we both agree, is the best game we've ever seen him play. Maybe some agree, disagree, fine, but considering the circumstances, I thought that was his best game, and you agree with me as well. The fadeaway 51-yarder against the Raiders to put things away. The way he's played, the awesome thing is he's played so well and is, I think, with more wins, inching towards getting into that MVP conversation at some point. But there's so much more to go with this offense and so much more room for him to go and this offense to go. And he's going to get there. Like, the offense is going to get there with health. They're going to continue to be excellent. And he's trying different things. This is one of the smartest guys in the NFL. Obviously, coming out of college, very intelligent human being. I respect anybody who's a science major, as one myself. The difference is I can't go on the field and do what he does. He is just awesome. And the fact that he's doing this in an offense that he's had to learn after learning another offense, after learning another one, after having to learn 3 different ones in college, is incredible. And I just love that he is trying things out and letting things go while still playing at an excellent level. I mean, if the Vikings, we get his excellent play against the blitz, against the Raiders, we get movement and the way that he can juke out this player, stiff arm this player, maneuver in the pocket. I mean, just outstanding play from him overall. And you've got some big games coming up. You got that game against the Cowboys, you got the game against the Chiefs. Those are just the kinds of games where Justin Herbert rises to the occasion. Whether the team wins or not, I don't know, but I know that Justin Herbert is going to be excellent. And so for me, call it MVP, call it best player, you name it, Justin Herbert's my guy.
Yeah, you get primetime Justin Herbert with Kellen Moore's offense than 3 of the next 4 games for the Chargers. It's going to be a ton of fun to see what he's able to do in those situations. So bit longer of a show today than we have done in the past few weeks. Hopefully you guys kind of enjoyed our emphasis on the game and kind of zooming out and seeing where, kind of taking stock of where the Chargers are at in the conference as players, as coaches. That was kind of our goal today, so hopefully you enjoyed the show. Appreciate the Chargers for letting us have this platform, as always. Appreciate Greg Kim for producing. That's going to do it for us today. We'll be back at the same time next week to preview the Dallas Cowboys Monday Night Football game. So going to be a ton of fun. Cannot wait for that matchup, and really excited for the next quarter of the Chargers football. So appreciate all you guys for tuning in. That's going to do it for us. We'll see you next time. As always, Bolt up.